Well, hell. Welcome back to Tech Travel and Twang. Well, hey, welcome back to Tech Travel and Twang, Tuesday Tea Edition with part three of You Asked For It. I'm Jen Barbie here with Kristen Cruz. Hey, Kristen.
Hey, Jen Barbie.
Are you ready to wrap up the You Asked For It?
I'm excited. This has been a really good. I feel like we should do these, and hopefully those listening agree, that we should solicit questions on a regular basis from the industry, like our friends in the industry who were so willing to just throw us some topics that were burning for them. I feel like we should do this often. It's been really enlightening to just hear and be able to respond to some of these
It
topics.
really has. It's been a great time talking to different people in the industry we don't normally talk to on a regular basis, and it's interesting to see where the commonalities have been in these questions for us,
Hmm.
and then the that have been different. So we're wrapping up part three. If you haven't seen part one and two, go listen to some of the other questions and our answers to from our opinions from those pieces. But it's been a lot of fun, and we're going to wrap up with our big hairy question, Kristen, which is where is digital marketing going for a DMO?
I
Like we
know
might
this was
need
a
part
toughie.
6, 7, and 8.
We were so overwhelmed by this question because it's so broad.
Mhm.
It's a weighted question. Like this question feels like it's 1,000 pounds. Um, where is it going? I think our overarching answer to this is it's going wherever Google, Facebook, Meta, it's going wherever the big kahunas in our industry are taking us, number one.
Mhm.
Um, because we are sort of slaves in a certain way to where what areas we have to actually do our work, what platforms are available to us to actually do our work.
Oh, that's a good
Um,
point because then you've got the disruptors like TikTok, right? And so then we go,
right.
what do you do with that? Like, is it here? Is it going away?
Well, as a DMO marketer, I think our biggest job is to stay up to date on how users are behaving when they travel, when they research travel, when they plan to book, when they're thinking about traveling. Like what are the behaviors look like? Because that ends up being where we need to behave as well as a marketer. Where do we need to be in order to build the awareness for where our users are going? And because the DMO industry, we are not technology providers. We are not social media, platforms. We are not video platforms. We are truly an industry that is almost following the leader, and the leaders are the platforms that we're kind of a slave to, and also how those platforms are changing user behavior.
For sure, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a good point about changing the user behavior, but also I like your point about where, because that's I think the first thing you have to make sure of is where in the journey are you responsible? And that's typically
Mhm.
been awareness, but as we've seen with some of the questions, I feel like DMOs are keep getting tasked with more and more responsibility. Now they're getting asked about different parts of the journey. We talked about booking in part two. That's a hornet's nest to step into. So I would say if you look at that journey and your journey still awareness, and to your point, we're a slave to these platforms and these platform disruptors. And
Mhm.
does that mean we do that? And does that mean so? I would say one thing is probably not changing, and that is the need to create a story and a content line.
And to stay I think the question started with a more digital mindset in mind. And I'm going to kind of veer us a little bit on this question because another question that I feel like we get a lot is how much of should I be doing these traditional media marketing things? Like, should I still have an ad in Southern Living? Should I still have
Depends.
this billboard on I-20? Should I still, you know what I mean?
My
And
answer is it
so
depends. It depends, right?
I think we are the other issue, which isn't always an issue, but can always be an issue for us in the marketing realm, is that we are always tasked with a KPI that is actionable. Like, okay, we spent $10,000 here. What happened with it? What did they do from it? How many people saw it? What action did they take? There's always some action
Hmm.
requirement from our board, from whoever, right? That's looking at this from an ROI perspective. And traditional is being less and less appropriate for that quick action. Unless you're doing QR codes, which we know, there's pros and cons to that as well, but there's a lot of things that have to move into digital for a
Hmm.
DMO that's used to having more of a balance of traditional and digital efforts. And so that that's a whole different question. Like, where is digital going for each of these destinations, right? Like every destination has a different path
Yeah.
forward based on so many things.
I like what you say about traditional. I think I have a slightly different opinion on it, because I do think there's a renaissance and a revival of, you know, tactile pieces of marketing. So a little bit from that, but I think we can get more creative with it. But also, I guess my answer is always it depends. Like if you've had that in Southern living, maybe you don't have, maybe your people are not really social media savvy. Maybe those travelers are anti those pieces. So that might be more appropriate. But overall, holistically, absolutely, we've moved at accelerating pace in this digital
Mm-hmm.
world just in the last, I mean, gosh, just in the last decade where we've come. Facebook isn't as old as you think it is, and it is a main staple. So you've got to look at where things are going. And I think we're getting so tripped up because we're slower to adopt in this industry than some other industries were to a
That's
digital
true.
environment. So because we were slower, now when the new things come, we feel very stressed and very compressed. And what's next? Which is why everybody's talking about AI in DMOs right now, and it's way too early. Like you should be thinking about it, but it's not ready to be an implementable thing except on some very specific basis.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of our earlier saga, we'll call it the saga series, was talking about replacing like or
Mhm.
what various roles get replaced by some of the new technologies, and content was one of them. And I think it definitely, to your point, it's definitely very early for all of that. But that is where things are headed. And so if you're a DMO
Mhm.
that has the luxury of truly like planning that far ahead and really like understanding um where your DMO could be in 5 to 10 years, then absolutely be looking for some of the much newer technologies in a different way. But a lot of DMOs just can't plan like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I would say there's a lot more catching up for DMOs than they think there is in the digital space already. There's not a lot who are really activating a real-time personalized AI ad technology. Like AI really should be in your ad tech. Like that's
Hmm.
already available. So there's some catching up before even worrying about what the future is, I think.
Agreed. I absolutely, yeah. The industry in general has to do a lot of catching up because, like as you said, there was a lot of late adoption. It wasn't necessarily because DMOs didn't want to adopt the technology, or where user behavior was trending, but and we all know because everyone on this podcast is probably in the DMO world, there's a lot of red tape. And so it's not just DMO leaders going, hey, I'm going to make the decision to go and adopt this and let's go and let's run. There's a lot of
Hmm.
buy-in and conversation and budget. And there's a lot of things that have to kind of fall into place in order for a DMO to truly be on the forefront of adopting, new digital techniques. It's not as
More,
easy for a DMO.
no, and I think in the short term, it's more important to think about where your digital communication channels are and what you're communicating in this current social environment. Are you communicating your sustainability? Are you communicating your DEIA? Like those are the things that travelers
Right.
are caring about and are thinking about. So I think it's more important. I love this question, and it's always like, what's the future of so and so? We could go full on Minority Report advertising if we want to talk about that, but it's not real to our day to day. So I feel like our day to
Yeah.
day, like we just have a little more to do. And traditionally, like I do believe, I know the visitor guide has been a huge question for so long. Like, should we even still
Oh, it
produce that?
has. Yeah. Well, I kind of always boil the visitor question down to some of the other like social, like how active or how many
Hmm.
platforms. I always boil that down to consistency. I think that you're going to have a consistent audience that does like the consistency of being able to utilize visitor guides to plan their travel or have
Mhm.
that touchy-feely something, right? And I'm talking like the physical, not just the digital, but the physical aspect of it too. That consistency is really important. And just as continuing, if you're going to adopt a platform and market on that platform, being consistent in that platform, not following what
Mhm.
necessarily makes sense for what the trends are saying or what's happening in the media, but really kind of looking at your stats. If that platform is working for you and your DMO, stay consistent in it. If your visitor guide is flying off the shelves and you have a lot of downloads from it, stay consistent with it. Don't just follow the trend, because holistically as an industry, we're saying, it could be on the outs, or that's not as popular anymore. I think it, like you say, it depends. I think the the mantra of this entire series is it depends.
It really does. It does. You can't plan off of, and you shouldn't. You should take pieces home that are germane to you. You can't come off of a conference or off of a podcast or off of anybody else's advice and saying, okay, this is what Christian and Jen says, so we're going to process this. That's just not the way you should do anything. It's always a depending
Right.
situation. And honestly, overall, the future of digital marketing is just going to get more and more handheld. I think that's my answer would be like, look at what people are holding in their hands. And now what they've got, glasses have the Bluetooth in them now. Like,
Did you see that Samsung has a ring? I was
yes,
at Best Buy this weekend buying my new fancy mic, which I have to for those on video. Look at how fancy this is.
nice and
I feel
fancy.
super professional. Um, but anyway, I was at, well, anyway, I saw the whole Samsung display and they had these rings. I'm like, Samsung, and they look like gold, platinum, like they look like wedding bands. And I'm like, what in the world is this? And it's like, it's technology for your
Mhm,
finger. It's essentially
mhm.
like, what in the world?
Yeah.
Like
So,
everything, when we say wearables and holdables and whatever, like this
mhm.
technology is advancing so quickly that we can't even keep up, like with what those items are at this point.
Absolutely. And all those items end up being an ad platform in one way or another. So,
Hmm.
that's gonna come around too. Um, but I love this. We love more questions. Send them in, DM them to us, send them through our LinkedIn page, email Kristen or I. We'd love to answer more questions
Yes, we
in
want to
our
do
You
this
Asked for It.
consistently. Yes.
Awesome. Final thoughts, Kristen, on our questions so far?
I just have one final thought, and that is, I think treat every question that you put out, whether it's to us, to your peers, to your board, whatever, treat it like a study. Treat it like an opinion based, like get a second, third, fourth opinion on things that are really burning or really troubling you.
Agreed.
But really think about how different we all are as destinations and as marketers and as teams. There's really no one size fits all. So take your answers with a grain of salt. Look at it like a study. Look at it as like you're collecting data to analyze, right? Holistically. And that's kind of that's my 2 cents. I
Do
don't
all
want any of
that.
our answers to be end all be all, like Jen and Kristen said.
No, 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 no. I love that. So my final word would be take all that in, like Kristen said, get all your opinions, and then go with your gut. If you're in a leadership
Yes.
position, you've got good intuition. Always, always, always go with your gut.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We will see you next time with some new special guests, actually.
Bye,
Y'all be good to each
guys.
other.